But what I wanted to dive into first is the question of politics and religion, or Christianity, the teachings of Jesus Christ, how that aligns, because people are always like, yeah, Jesus wasn't political, which is not true. Jesus did not have a political mission, meaning he did not want to politically build a kingdom and take over the world, ruling in a political way. He wanted, in an earthly way, he wanted to build the kingdom in a spiritual way. And therefore, the disciples also were kind of taught and then sent out to spread the message after he went up. And after the resurrection, 40 days, he went up to heaven. So that is where people are very wrong, because even though my mission might not be a political one, I might never run for office, but I'm still a political person. That means I call out things I see that are wrong, or I criticize, I'm involved, and I care about it because it affects us. And if non-Christians, or really anti-Christians, or in my like, even if you're agnostic or atheist, people that just have really bad morals are very loud in our society, in our world, and are putting out a lot of their policies, and they're like really implemented. Then if us Christians, we just say, yeah, we're not political, it affects our daily lives. So we can't just be silent. We don't have to be running for office, all of us, and play that game. But just by voting for the lesser evil, for example, is still better than not voting. Or any kind of change in people's mind will also lead to a change of policies, if it's a big one. So if politicians see that this is so unpopular, they might not do it. And why Jesus was political is pretty easy, because he went out and publicly criticized earthly leaders, which were also spiritual leaders, but it was kind of combined back then. So he called out the Pharisees and Sadducees. They were not only religious figures, and they were a part of Judea's governing elite and under Rome. So, for example, he said, "Woe to teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites." He said that publicly. You can read Matthew 23, Matthew 21:13. "My house will be called a house of prayer, but you are making it a den of robbers." That was him disrupting commerce in the temple and directly challenging religious economic system centered in Jerusalem. He flipped tables. He was saying, this is the house of my father. What have you done to it? Also criticizing the economical, the markets and the sacrificing, and how the leaders were implementing that and gaining from that. So he really challenged those a lot and publicly. So he really made statements politically. Also, he made a passive statement, but that was only to not get, I guess, taken into custody right away and into prison, when he was talking about the coins are Caesar's, so give them to Caesar, meaning the taxes. But I also think that he might really did not have that much of an issue with taxes themselves. I mean, he did, but it was not the most crucial thing. That's when people are like, yeah, he was a spiritual leader and wanted to build a spiritual kingdom, which is totally correct. And that's what he wanted to do, and that's what we all should do, because politics will get corrupt. And so we should really try to just do, I don't know, what was it, Matthew 28:19? That is one of the biggest commandments almost is given to us, is go out there, spread the message, do your ministry, increase the disciples. And when people say, oh, why are you pushing your religion on others? It is out of love for people, because if you truly believe that this is your salvation, then how can you not want to get all your loved ones to realize that and benefit from it and be part of it? Like, if that is your purpose of life, if that is what you truly believe, how can you not tell the people you love the most? How can you not tell everyone? Because you're supposed to love your neighbor as yourself. So it's just out of love for humanity that you should do it. The question is obviously how you do it. And if you see if someone has an open mind, an open heart, because if not, then it's going to be difficult, but you can still try to plant the seed. So that, yeah, on the first topic, because people might be like, so you're Christian, like, why are you doing this? This says, like, politics have nothing to do with Christianity, and Jesus wasn't political and all that. So I'm telling you, Jesus was political, and Jesus wasn't a political missionary, but he was political, as I am political. So what do I want to get in first? First news story is that Elon Musk became a trillionaire. And what does that mean, first of all? A trillionaire. He's a trillionaire on paper. It does not mean he has $1 trillion in his bank account. That's what people don't understand. Because people always like, tax the rich, tax the rich. He's been taxed a lot. And he takes his money and reinvests it into his companies. And his companies right now have built 170,000 jobs. And all those jobs, all those people with those jobs, they are paying taxes. That means he also pays all those taxes indirectly. He has made over 1,000 millionaires. These people could also all be out of work. Would that be good for the United States? Would that 170,000 jobs in very, very, what's the word? In very innovative, that's the word, technology fields. Would they even exist here? Would maybe the biggest electric car company not be out of the United States, for example? And so he's doing so much. If he would not be who he is and do what he does in America, we would be worse off. There would be so much less wealth and so much less income. That is insane. And for the people, there's a lot of people on the left, and I'm not saying everything the left wants is irrational or stupid, that think it's a zero-sum game. So if Elon Musk creates wealth, then he's taking that from someone else. But then please explain how the measurable wealth and in materialistic things and what people have and how comfortable people are have gone up over the entire world about like 80% in the last 100 years. How did that happen if it's a zero-sum game? Because creating new technology and new ideas and new products that make life easier are not a zero-sum game. Everyone benefits from it. And people buy it because they think the trade is worth it. So the company gets wealthier and the people are better off because now they have something that makes their life better and easier. You can't tell me 100 years ago life was better and there was the same amount of wealth. It was just distributed in another way. No one was as rich and the poorest were way poorer than now. The gap widened, but also the poorest got way richer. That is true as well. Just that the rich became way, way, way more richer. And because we all compare each other to each other and not to a universal standard or to some standard, and the standard always rises, that's why people get jealous. But of course people give away more. But the thing is, they also don't want to give away more because they see what the government does with their money. And the government is so inefficient. I would also, if I be a billionaire, I would also rather do good with my money myself than give it to the government that's going to waste so much of it on a way and so little will actually be effectively used for what I do. If I would do that myself, whatever government program my tax money would get into, if I would do that myself, it would be way more effective, it would be way more beneficial for the beneficiary, and I could reach way more people. If I would feed people myself with my tax dollars, I could feed way more people than leaving it to the government. That's going to pay government workers way too much. And that's going to be like inefficient in every way and blow up money and be like, oh, the money went somewhere else. And you see how corrupt it is. In California, there's $24 billion spent on the homeless and they can't account for it. They're like, we don't know where it went. It must be somewhere. Or they give it to NGOs that don't do anything or that are even fraudulent, that don't even try to do anything. So what I want to say is he built over 170,000 jobs, 1,000 millionaires. So indirectly through them, he probably pays $6, $7, $8 billion in tax. Then he pays, and that's like year 24. And he himself around $6 billion. And so, yeah, that's it. And if he would sell everything he got, then he's a trillionaire, by the way. If he would sell every asset, everything he has, then he's a trillionaire, right? He's not a trillionaire on his bank account. So let's say he did that. It's not like 1 trillion doesn't even pay off the interest on our American debt a year. Elon cannot save us. But if you would sell everything he got, and he wouldn't sell it to an owner of like within the United States or someone that might not lead those companies as well as he does, we might have some people laid off. We might have way less jobs. Therefore, more unemployment and less tax income. So you see where that goes. It is not that simple. And it just sounds great. And you're like, yeah, these bad people that make so many people rich, by the way. Just try to do your best. Find ways to make money yourself. Don't be a victim. And yeah, call out the people that actually do evil stuff, like Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, forcing African countries to vaccinate themselves with stuff that ends up like being very fatal for women, for example. Look it up. So, next topic is, Tulsi and Fauci. So, let's do Tulsi and Fauci. So, former Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard has been a vocal critic of former National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease Director Dr. Anthony Fauci. Her criticism has focused on issues including COVID-19 policies, government funding of gain-of-function research, pandemic-era decision-making, like the very unscientific 6 feet that were just made up. You can all read it up in emails from him. And transparency within public health institutions. Fauci, who became one of the most recognizable public officials during the pandemic, has defended his actions and rejected allegations of wrongdoing. The debate remains of a broader discussion about accountability for pandemic policies and the role of public health officials. So if you think Fauci is not to blame, then how come he did not sue RFK Jr. for his book, The Real Anthony Fauci, if it was all lies in there? So you would have to explain to me. So how did that happen? It is totally wild that this guy is still free. And I wonder what your position on that is, and the whole handling of the pandemic. For myself, I protested like one weekend. I'm like, this sounds like the empowerment laws that Adolf Hitler put in Germany in 1933. When just the government just told people, you can't move, you can't go outside, you can't do anything. So they were just like, the empowerment lays within that. They just said, oh, it's an emergency, and now we can dictate around whatever you're allowed to do. And we can even force something into your bodies that is not a vaccine. At the time, it was not a vaccine because they had to change the definition for vaccine in order to call this vaccine. And they also had to claim that ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine would not have any effect, and there was no alternative treatment, in order to be able to force that on people, the vaccine. Because if there's an alternative treatment, you're not allowed to do that, because you could also choose to do the alternative treatment. Turns out even Chris Cuomo was on ivermectin after and apologized for being wrong on that. But the sad thing is that there's no apologies of almost anyone. They were like, oh, we couldn't know, and they knew from the start. They all knew from the start. RFK knew from the start. He predicted everything from the start. Yeah. So the 6 biggest claims that RFK makes in his book are funding risky virus research, and misleading the public about it, abuse of power during COVID, Fauci accumulated excessive influence over public health policy and used that influence to shape pandemic responses, suppressing alternative treatments, what I said, agencies marginalized treatments such as hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, and he ties that to big pharma. The book alleges Fauci agency developed relationships with pharmaceutical companies that treated conflicts of interest, that created conflicts of interest. Mismanagement of AIDS crisis, that was before. Several chapters argue Fauci sidelined dissenting scientific views during the HIV/AIDS era and promoted harmful policies. Undermining civil liberties, Kennedy argues that COVID mandates, lockdowns, and vaccines policies contribute to an erosion of democratic freedoms, and that Fauci played a central role in those policies, which we all know is true. So, yeah, and I'm glad that Tulsi is coming out saying that. The next story is kind of super wild. Super wild. So, do you remember Al Gore in 2006? By the way, how do you like this one? Local sports team. Because I have no idea about sports here. Al Gore in 2006 published his documentary, Inconvenient Truth, where he painted a picture of the future being a total catastrophe through climate change, that New York would be underwater and all the ice would melt, and total catastrophe, world's going to go down. And the wild thing is, it was supposed to be shown in schools, also in Great Britain, that movie. But the wildest thing is he got a Nobel Prize for that. A Nobel Prize. And it came out to be all dead wrong on everything. Like, completely false. And you could argue, yeah, because we implemented so much great climate change policies and actions that we prevented it. No, we didn't. Because China and India are the main polluters on the earth, and they didn't do anything. And we also didn't do anything. We didn't decrease our pollution by like CO2 output by much, if anything. So, total nonsense. So that's on that. But yeah, he got a Nobel Prize for that. But then he was also sued in Great Britain over misinformation. And apparently he won that lawsuit, so it could be shown in schools. But turns out right now that it was all false and it was total misinformation. And in my view, he should, like, the Nobel Prize is now worth nothing anymore. It's a vitamin C prize, who knows who, and who benefits whatever narrative agenda that is out there, at least in a bunch of fields. Maybe not in physics or math, I don't think so. But in other fields might still be cool, but there's a bunch of fields where it's definitely corrupted. And so what should happen to Al Gore? I mean, the guy started the total panic and got a Nobel Prize for that. I think he should be stripped of the Nobel Prize at least. I don't know if you can't hold him accountable for research. You can claim what you want. I guess it's kind of freedom of speech. So that's fine, because I don't want that to be suppressed, because he could have been right back then. So if that would have been suppressed without exceptional proof against it, evidence against it, then yeah. If it would have been like dead on clear back then in front of a jury, in front of a court, that there's so much evidence that this is all lies, then obviously that's something different. But yeah. So what do you think on Al Gore overall? What do you think? And he's still saying that he was right. I'm like, dude, please rewatch. How are you right? I don't know how he's defending that. It's a total mystery to me, but people are so delusional these days. And that's kind of the media, because the media paints pictures for people that make him think of a reality that's not there. And it's also that a lot of people are very naive about the nature of humans and the evil that is in a lot of humans. And so they always think, for example, that everyone's going to be is nice and great. And a lot of people want to have our country ruled in a way that would work for their reality, which is not reality. So they live in a great La La Land utopia in their minds, and their policies would work in that La La Land utopia, but they're not realistic about the actual truth of how this world works and how people are. And it's not that the other side is evil, it's that the other side just is realistic and pragmatic. So and on that La La Land, my home country of Germany, I'm half German, half Austrian. They're woker than Californistan. Man, it's crazy. And it's in my hometown in Germany. I'm embarrassed. It's called Kassel. And it went very viral because what they did throughout the World Cup right now, or what they still are doing, I don't know if they get rid of this prohibition, but they said in a cultural institution club kind of where you can publicly watch the World Cup, or there's like my dad's playing in that club actually, giving a jam session. He's a jazz bass player. Stuff like that's happening there. It's called the Cultural Center, and they actually prohibited the use of German banners and flags in the showing during and throughout the World Cup, or maybe ever, because it could offend people. This is in Germany. This is just so wild. Imagine we weren't allowed in the United States, not to offend people, to use our flag. So where are you going to use it? Like, should we never use a flag again? Because it could offend someone? If you're offended by a flag of the country you live in, get the heck out. Get out. You obviously don't like it. You know, you can claim asylum somewhere else. If they let you claim asylum because you're so suppressed by the bad country you live in. And that was to every country. That wasn't my country. But, you know, some people can't just leave a country, so they have to claim asylum. And you're politically prosecuted, obviously, by the showing a flag that endangers you. Very, very much so. And then I have a really big issue with this. And I have, so there's Pride Month right now, and pride is a sin overall, first of all. So that's not a great name. But I have a problem with identifying so much with your sexuality. That should not be who you are. It's like, I'm Leo and I'm straight. Whoever said that? I'm XYZ and I'm straight. Like, no, but I'm blah and I'm LGBTQIS whole alphabet, then that's like totally normal. So I think you should identify with your purpose and with being a child of God, or, you know, if you're not, then at least with your purpose or anything else, but your sexuality. So if your sexual organ gets cut off or is not there anymore, look, are you then, or you if you're not pursuing the act of sex, are you then no one? Are you like, what are you? So that's, first of all, totally stupid. But also imagine there was a symbol, let's just call them pride community would use, and we as Christian would be like, we take that symbol and we make it our number one symbol now. Well, that's what they did, because the rainbow is a Christian symbol. And yeah, that's kind of a problem, because I don't like it, because it's anti-Christian what they're doing. It's adultery. And don't get me wrong, I'm not judging a person by a sin they commit, because we're all sinners and I commit sins all day and I try to better myself. That's my, aim. But at the same time, if you are gay and you're a Christian otherwise, I'm not going to judge you on being gay, and therefore I reject you, because I am with sin as well. And if you know you are, and you try to better yourself, or you try not to pursue it, or you at least acknowledge it and try to improve in every other aspect of life, who am I to judge you over one thing and one sin? And who is to say which sin is worse than the other? So I'm not saying, like, I have gay friends and I really like them and they're otherwise good people and it's their decision. I don't support that decision. Like, I'm not like, yeah, become gay. If my son would say, dude, dad, I'm gay, I'm like, oh, nice, awesome, great. But I wouldn't condemn. I don't condemn gay people. So I'm just saying, I can judge actions but I'm not judging people as a whole, because I don't know anyone entirely, and I don't know anyone's intentions, backgrounds, the ways that led to their beliefs and their actions. I don't know. But I can judge, and we all judge, every day, actions. If I punch someone in the face without any, pre-story, then that's a bad action. If it's defending myself, that's something way different. So, see what I mean? But there's some actions that are just bad actions. If I just go on the street and punch someone randomly, that's a bad action. You can judge that, and you should judge that. So this, who am I to judge? Don't judge a person in his or hers entirety. But you can always judge actions. And you should, and you have to. And if you don't, like, how are you, like, then you can't have any morals, because in an ethic, that is what makes you judge either way. So what I'm saying is, like, I have a big problem with this celebration, because they shouldn't celebrate that for a month in a way that a lot of people do. They can, or we can celebrate equality, like an equality month, and they can celebrate, and all cool. But if they celebrate half naked on buses and very sexualized, and that's adultery and sinful in my view, then I don't condone that. I'm not gonna, do anything to them, or like try to sabotage something or so. But I'm saying I don't like it. I can't say that, Do I therefore don't like those people that do it? No. I don't dislike everyone who takes part in that, therefore. I just dislike them taking part in it. I just dislike that one action. That doesn't mean that these people are full of bad actions after that, or before that, or during. But every one of us can state their opinion without judging entire people or groups. And they can do the same to me. I, like, 100%. And everyone can judge actions of mine, and if I'm wrong, argue for why I'm wrong, and I have no problem with it. Because if you're right, and I realize you're right, I thank you for it, and I try to improve on that, because I want to be better. So if you are that afraid of criticism, if you have that much of a problem with reflecting and questioning yourself, then there's probably a way, way deeper problem. So, and that leads us to the MLB Pride Month hats. So, I'm just for, honestly, leaving politics out of sports. Sports are supposed to unite people. Sports are supposed to entertain and just be a positive thing. And let's say we okay that political messages or societal messages in sports. Then we also have to let every individual decide for themselves, and not be like, oh, everyone has to wear this hat now that says I'm with the Pride community or so. Because if some people are not comfortable, and that does not mean they're against it, they're just like, or against those people, like I just said, or that they despise those people, but they don't like maybe heterosexuality. It's not like they can't be friends with them, but there's a difference between tolerance and promotion. We tolerate all kinds of things that might not be morally correct, but that should not be punished in in the law, through the law. So we can tolerate all kinds of things, be totally fine with it, but therefore we don't have to promote it. If I don't like sauerkraut, I can tolerate everyone eating sauerkraut. But do I have to promote sauerkraut now? Be like, oh yeah, I'm pro sauerkraut. No. I'm like, I tolerate sauerkraut, but I'm not going to advertise it because I don't eat it. I don't use it. I'm not a fan. So being a fan and being okay or tolerating something is just two different things. So just because you're not a vocal supporter doesn't mean you're the exact opposite. You can be in the middle. You can't just be like, I don't want to promote it, but I don't hate them. That's where I am. And I bet that's where a lot of these MLB players are. And then some are like, okay, well, then I promote what I like too. And I put a Bible verse on it. You know, and that should be totally fine. If it is fine to promote Pride Month, it is also fine to promote the Bible and Jesus Christ. So you can't have it both ways. Oh, you only can have it both ways, but you can't have it just one way. You can't be like, oh yeah, just that, but not that. You either freedom of speech or no freedom of speech. You either implement it into it or you don't. But you can't just implement the stuff that you like and the other stuff not. Because you're the, like, and that's the funny thing, that a lot of these people are the people that are like screaming for tolerance. But they only want to be tolerated for what the ways they are different. They don't tolerate anyone else being different or wanting something different. You have to tolerate me, but I don't have to tolerate you, buddy. That's not how it works. It's not how it works. And it's the same with democracy. It's not only democratic if it goes my way. Democratic if it goes the way of the people. Demos means the people. And cratic means like ruling. So the people are ruling. Democracy, rule of the people. So, yeah. So the hats, I think that's stupid. And I mean, did it do anything good? No, it didn't do anything good. Of course it didn't. Maybe they even know that that's going to happen. I mean, they should. And then they see that's going to backfire. So maybe they want the division. They want, you know, some distraction. Or they're just angry at people that, you know, are intolerant of them. Or, I don't know, but it's just like they want to provoke the other side. I don't see it, but it's something that should not happen. I wonder what you guys' opinion is on that. Let me know. The final topic is kind of crazy. So in Great Britain, and this was backed by another study a few years ago, a recently published study examined organized child sexual exploitation groups in the United Kingdom has resignated a debate over the issue commonly referred to as grooming gangs. The research analyzed offender demographics, crime patterns, and institutional responses across multiple cases spanning several decades. The topic has remained controversial due to disagreements over the interpretation of the data, media coverage, and questions about whether authorities were reluctant to address certain aspects of the crimes. The issue continues to be discussed in the political, legal, and public policy circles. So it is a wild number that was supposed to be, or allegedly was raping white, and that's what they said, white girls or women in the last few years. In West Yorkshire, 35% of child sexual exploitation suspects were Asian, while Asians made up about 16% of the population. So that is should be also 16% if it would be in relation. In Great Manchester, more than 50% were Asian. So the Asians are mostly Pakistani, from my understanding. In Operation Stovewood, nearly two-thirds of those convicted were Pakistani heritage, while Pakistanis were roughly 4% of the local population. So two-thirds, 66% of those convicted were Pakistani, and just 4% of the local population are Pakistani. The report stated that the available national data was too poor to make definite nationwide conclusions about offender ethnicity, but found enough evidence that the issue warranted further investigation. Yeah, because it was not nationwide, the study, but it's definitely a crazy number and ratio. The government announced that over 800 historic cases would be reviewed, with officials expecting the total to exceed 1,000 cases. Yeah, so crazy stuff. Yeah, I don't know how it plays out, how it all works, why that is really happening, why they get this notion that is justified to rape people. They say it's because they're of a different belief and therefore they're not worthy anything. And even if they think so, there's no place, to my knowledge, in the Quran that says you can rape women that are non-believers. The Quran, I don't think the Quran is the problem. I don't believe in the Quran because it just has some problems that are making no sense. Like, for example, the Quran says that Jesus was a prophet, but not the Messiah. You can't say that. There's either or. So either someone who says he's the Son of God, and you claim he's not, he's just a prophet. But then at the same time, you would actually have to say, well, if he says he's the Son of God, but he's just a prophet, he would be a blasphemer. And that's the highest of sins. That's the worst. So he's either the truth or he's a huge blasphemer and he's the worst. And from all the evidence, historic, in the Bible, because the Bible also has historic accounts. They were just put in the Bible. It's not like it's a book of 66 authors. And they're written in historic narrative, the Gospels. And also we have over 100 of prophecies from the Old Testament that Jesus fulfilled. So they were talking about in Isaiah 53 that, basically he was the one who's to come is going to be nailed to the cross and be rejected. And 700 years later, it happens. He would that is historically pretty well established that Jesus lived and was crucified, and that he said that he will be crucified. He said he has to be, meaning himself, the Messiah, has to be lifted up as the serpent in the wilderness. And that was from the Old Testament, when they put a serpent on a cross in order to face their fears and cast out their fears over these toxic serpents that were in the desert going after the Israelites. And they were actually, by that, healed in a way that the toxins of the serpents would not affect them anymore. And as they put a serpent on a cross and lifted it up, he said he has to be lifted up as the serpent in the wilderness. And that is a picture, obviously, someone, the serpent, like him on the cross, lifted up. So and there's so many of these things. And it's just like, okay, guys, you can't say that. You can't say he was a prophet. blasphemer, biggest blasphemer ever, or the truth and the Son of God. Or you just say he doesn't exist, whatever, which is also pretty like disproven that he didn't exist. So that's my biggest issue. Like, I can't believe in that when there's such a discrepancy. And it's a one author book. Like, of course, you can't, if you have one author, you're not going to conflict yourself. But he even does. Contradict yourself, sorry. So, but there's nothing in the Islam that would make anyone who has any brain think you could just rape non-believers. It also says here, there's no mainstream Islamic teaching that says it's justified to rape non-believers. I'm just going to read this. Historically, classic Islamic law, like many pre-modern legal systems, permitted slavery, including female captives taken in war. Some medieval jurists allow sexual relationships with female slaves under specific legal framework of this time. Modern critics argue that the doctrines created conditions that could be exploited to justify coercive sex, while contemporary Muslim scholars generally reject slavery altogether and view such rulings as inapplicable today. Groups such as Islamic State explicitly cited medieval texts and precedents to justify enslaving and sexually abusing non-Muslim captives, particularly Yazidi women. Their interpretation was widely condemned by Muslim scholars and institutions around the world as a distortion of Islam. Yeah, and that's what happens. Like, it's the same, like, we're hundreds of years later, but there was also a lot of bloodshed in the name of Christianity. But did Jesus anywhere teach us to do that? Is there anything in the Bible that tells us to kill non-believers? No. People still did it. But that's not the fault of the Bible. That's the fault of the people. So in that same way, it's a corruption of the Islam, and it's not the Islam itself that would make people do that. That's people using the Islam and misinterpreting it, and probably kind of somewhat willfully so. So I just want to say that on that. And we both have the Old Testament that we believe in. We have the same origin. Islam says if you want to find out the truth, look at the Bible. It actually says so. Which is kind of weird, which is kind of like thinking to me, like making me think that, did Muhammad want to lure Christians into his belief by doing that? So like, yeah, we're so similar. Just read my text, and it's like, I'm a new prophet, so this is all right and stuff, but I'm just making maybe like a third covenant. I don't know, and I'm the end of this all. I'm the last one to come. So yeah, but as I said, I told you the reason why I don't believe it. You can believe whatever you want. You can. I have Muslim friends that are really nice, really good people, and I think true, real Muslims are good people that really live by the book. And yeah, that's on that. I wish you all a very, very great week. I hope you enjoyed this and you subscribe, and there's going to be a lot more to come. And please tell me where you want my stands on which topics, whether it's somewhat Christian or political, societal. Also, you can ask me some stuff about, obviously bodybuilding and fitness and whatnot, health. I just want to say that this is obviously my opinion and my interpretation at this point in time. I'm not claiming to know anything for certain, or that my interpretations are dead right, like spot on, and that I'm not of any shortcoming or, misinterpretation maybe myself. So I encourage you, if you have a different opinion, to argue your point in a nice way and in a good faith way, so we can get a good dialogue here. And yeah, just hope you enjoyed this. Hope you subscribe. Hope you share it with all your friends and family and loved ones. And I'm glad I got into this. So have a good one. Bye bye.